Curb Your Enthusiasm is one of those rare popular shows that I jumped in on pretty much towards the beginning. I started watching it in 2002 when my family went on a vacation to Georgia or something, and we ended up staying in a hotel that had free HBO, and it was on, and immediately I just thought the comedy style was right up my alley. Knowing that Larry David was one of the executive producers for the show Seinfeld, I was very interested in seeing what he had to present, and what he had to present was something that was brilliant and in the same exact vein of Seinfeld, but it felt like Larry David was all for George, Elaine, Kramer, and Jerry all wrapped up into one character, and since it was HBO, you could curse and get into a lot more risque situations. So pretty much right off the bat, this became one of my favorite shows of all time. But it's not perfect by any means, although some of Curb Your Enthusiasm's worst seasons would be some other shows' best seasons. But what I'd like to do tonight is kind of start at the worst and get to the best. These are Curb Your Enthusiasm, best to worst, going by the seasons. This is the Overstimulation Station. Now, much like Seinfeld, as Curb Your Enthusiasm got later into its seasons, the more ridiculous the plot lines and the kind of overacting of the characters became. And if you look at the very first few seasons of Curb Your Enthusiasm, you're almost confused. Is this a real show? Like, is this unscripted? Like, you don't know, because the characters are all played so straight and it's all played so real that you almost feel like you're watching a real documentary of a TV show, especially the Curb Your Enthusiasm special that premiered in 1999, which I'm not going to include in this. But I would have to say the worst season of Curb Your Enthusiasm for me was definitely season 8. This sees Larry David getting his divorce with his wife Cheryl. Spoilers. It's only been out for the past 10 years now, so I hope you've seen season 8. But, you know, it just gets, the show, as I said, got more and more ridiculous, but in season 8, and I've got notes off over here to the side, so that's why I keep looking over to my left-hand side, or it could be right-hand side to you. But, I don't know, you got the whole Palestinian chicken episode where, you know, the Palestinians open up a chicken joint, and Larry and his gang being Jewish, it's like verboten for them to eat there, and Larry starts fucking this Palestinian woman, and it was really silly. And then they got the smiley face episode where Larry dates this girl who's like, I think in her 40s or something, and she's texting him smiley face emojis, and he's like, that's really creepy, can you not do that? I mean, it sounds funny on paper, and I know Larry's character is supposed to be like this uber neurotic kind of, you know, acerbic kind of person, but it gets so just over the top with this season. Then you have probably one of my least favorite episodes in this entire show would be the bisexual, which is the episode where Larry competes with Rosie O'Donnell for the same woman. You know, they're both trying to see who can get in the girl's pants the quickest, you know, because she's bi. You know, is Rosie O'Donnell gonna get in there, or is Larry David gonna get in there? And it's just, it was really stupid. I don't care for Rosie O'Donnell as an actress either, so I mean, the less I see her, the better. You had the whole overarching angle of this season was Larry flying to New York. They have like a episode where an ice cream truck triggers painful memories in Larry David's past, so anytime he's like hooking up with this girl, he'll hear this Mr. Softy ice cream truck jingle, and he'll get triggered, and he won't be able to sexually perform. And then the last episode is Larry David versus Michael J. Fox, and you know, Michael J. Fox is in the episode, and of course they play up the whole Parkinson's angle, which I guess is kind of funny to a certain degree, you know, if you're not uberly sensitive about every little thing. But still, I don't know, that was just the weakest season to me. I thought it got just really into the ridiculousness, and so yeah, season 8 is my least favorite. Alright, up next we have Season 9, which the overarching storyline on this season is the fatwa that is placed on Larry David's head by the Ayatollah after an impersonation that Larry David did on Jimmy Kimmel Live show and the Ayatollah saw it and got mad and basically placed a bounty on Larry's head. Again, man, as these seasons went on with this show, they just got more and more ridiculous. The ideas in this one are just, they're funny on paper. Like, for season 9, I will say, when I was reading the breakdown of the episodes on this particular season, just to read them, I was like laughing out loud. But they just weren't able to portray the ideas in a straight enough way. They've gotten so cartoony at this point on the show that at points it's almost unwatchable. At points, Larry David has become a cartoon character in many of the scenes. And, you know, without diving into each and every episode on here, because that would just take too much time, just know that the last season they did, it kind of just centers around Larry taking on a different identity because he's afraid that someone from the Ayatollah's regime is going to try and assassinate him. Then Marty Funkhauser's nephew dies as a result of Larry getting him to be involved with a prostitute because he broke his arm, and therefore he couldn't masturbate, so he was really upset about that. I don't know, it just got really crazy. The closer we get to the better seasons on this video, the more you'll realize how the show kind of fell off a little bit. But I would still say the whole New York angle from season 8 and everything that happened in that was kind of, you know, a notch dumber than season 9. I would say season 9 is slightly funnier, but still very cartoony. Alright, season 6 we see Larry David and his wife Cheryl still together. Now, I felt like Cheryl added such a huge foil to Larry David's craziness, and she kind of helped anchor the show a little bit because, you know, him being married, he can't go off and do too much crazy stuff because Cheryl's always going to be, you know, on his ass, reeling him in. And so basically any season where Larry and Cheryl are still married are better just in general to me than when they divorce, although the divorce angle was an interesting angle, which I'll talk about in the next season. But season 6 was pretty solid, but it drove me insane for one reason and one reason only, and it's something that continues to annoy me to this day. The Blacks. That sounded awful. The family is actually, their last name is the Blacks. Leon Black and his family. To this day, I cannot stand these characters. And it's not because they are black. It's because they're fucking annoying. And I get it. It's funny to pit this very in-your-face kind of like not afraid of observing the social norms in this uppity kind of Hollywood environment families such as the Blacks. It's funny to pit them against, you know, very self-conscious and very kind of timid Larry David, and Larry's even said, just by virtue of just who his character is in the show, it's always funny when Larry David interacts with black people. And throughout the whole show, he's kind of written himself into getting into all these awkward situations with black people, because if you know anything about Larry David, even as a person, like, he loves to push the buttons on social norms, and race is something that rarely gets brought up in sitcoms in that kind of way that might offend somebody. You know, the show's not on basic cable, it's on HBO, so you're allowed to kind of push the boundaries a little bit. But with that all being said, these characters of Leon and, God, I'm forgetting the... So it's Leon and his sister, and then her kids, and then their grandmother, and the characters just get on my fucking nerves. And in this season, season 6 is when the Blacks move into Larry David's house because they are Hurricane Katrina victims, and Cheryl wants to house a family, you know, because she's the more charitable one. Of course, Larry doesn't want to do it. But although Leon is such an annoying character, and I really feel like he puts a just, you know, I know some people think he's hilarious and that's great, but I think he's fucking annoying. I don't like the character, and I just wish that they would stop like milking this guy as Larry's best friend, and just get rid of him. But anyway, you got some good episodes on this season. The anonymous donor, Ted Danson, one of Larry's friends in the show, donates a wing of this hall to, I think it's the ASPCA, and it says anonymous, and Cheryl's like, oh my gosh, that's so nice. I know who it is, it's Ted. And Larry's like, well then it's not anonymous if you know who it is. So Ted was going around telling everyone that he was the anonymous donor, which, you know, kind of funny premise there. Then you got the TiVo guy, which is actually kind of the beginning of the Larry, David, Cheryl split arch, because Cheryl's plane is going down, and she calls Larry to bid her final farewells to him. And right as she's doing that, the TiVo guy is over at their house, and he's so hard to get a hold of, this TiVo guy, and Larry's finally got him over there. And so he's like, Cheryl, can it please wait 2 seconds? The TiVo guy's here. He's fixing our TiVo. He's going to record all your favorite shows. She's like, Larry, I got something to tell you, because her plane's going down. And he's like, Cheryl, please, just call back. Call right back. The TiVo guy's here. So he ends up hanging up on her, and she comes home from her trip, and she's like, I'm leaving you. And he's like, what? And yeah, so that kind of begins, and then they have quite a few episodes that, like 4 more actually after that, or 3 more after that episode, to end the season on, where it builds on the drama of them getting divorced. So aside from the Black family, that sounds awful, their last name in the show is the Blacks. Aside from those characters being annoying to me, season 6 was pretty solid. Season 7, man, wow. Okay, this season, it's one of the later seasons, and the only reason that it gets this spot is the Seinfeld reunion. This was a highly touted season for Curb Your Enthusiasm and Seinfeld fans, because Larry David actually got the full cast of Seinfeld back, the full main cast, Jerry, George, Kramer, and Elaine, and they actually were written into a arch of the whole season of season 7. Now, they have a bunch of other stuff going on this season too. Larry regrets his divorce from Cheryl. He's trying to get her back, basically. And her whole problem with him throughout this whole show, not just season 7, but the whole show, is that he never did anything. He just sat around. You know, after Seinfeld ended, he just kind of sat around and played golf and, you know, wasn't doing anything with his life. So he thought, well, maybe if I get back into TV and reunite the cast of Seinfeld and include Cheryl in the plot, that she'll get back with me and I'll be able to kind of seduce her back into my life. So that's the only reason he even wants to have a Seinfeld reunion, is to get his wife Cheryl back, which is kind of a funny premise. And it's just fantastic to see the original cast get back together. And they have some table read shots in this season of, you know, Jerry, Jason Alexander, Michael Richards, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus doing table reads. And I don't know why they cut all those scenes so short. I get that, you know, Larry being the kind of guy he is, he's not going to want to make the show about, oh, the Seinfeld reunion, because he's kind of like the, you know, anti that guy. He's not going to give you what you want, he's going to give you something that's more interesting. So showing just a new episode of Seinfeld wouldn't have been the interesting way to go, it would have been the obvious way to go. So it does tease throughout the whole season all these little Seinfeld moments. Larry's got to convince all 4 actors to be involved in the reunion, and Jerry Seinfeld is very skeptical, if I can fucking say the word. He's very skeptical because he's like, why is this not lame, Larry? Why is this not a lame idea? You never liked the idea of reunions. We always used to make fun of shows that did those cheesy reunions. And Larry's having to skirt around and be like, oh, you know, I just think it's a good idea. And really, the whole time, he's just trying to get his wife Cheryl back. So, yeah, like I said, outside of the whole Seinfeld arch of season 7, there is such a slew of ridiculousness that, you know, some of it's hit and miss, but I don't know. Like I said, the Seinfeld angle is what makes season 7, you know, as good as it is. Alright, season 5. This was the first season to me where I noticed a drop in quality in this show. It was the first season where I started to feel like the episodes were starting to get a little bit more on the ridiculous side, but there's still some really good, moments in here, some good episodes. The arch, there's 2 arches in this season, and it is that Richard Lewis A needs a kidney transplant. This is also one of Larry's good friends. I really shouldn't be explaining this, because if you're watching this video, you know these characters, you know the show. This show is not for your average casual viewer. And the fact that Larry finds out that he's adopted, or he thinks he's adopted. So those are the 2 arches that go on through this whole season. Season 5 starts out with the episode The Larry David Sandwich, which it's entertaining, but it's a stupid premise. Larry David goes to this delicatessen. He sees, there's this board of sandwiches on the wall, and it's got all these celebrities' names, and their name corresponds to a particular sandwich. So the Ted Danson is like this turkey sandwich. The Larry David sandwich is this disgusting, like there's 3 separate kinds of fish in it. There's capers, there's sour cream. It's a disgusting sandwich. So Larry wants to switch his sandwich with Ted Danson, because Ted Danson never goes in there, Larry David does, so he at least wants his sandwich to be associated with a tasty sandwich. So that's the whole kind of, and then that whole thing, ensues of him trying to get the sandwich changed. His dad has a stroke while he's eating the Larry David sandwich, and he tells his son that he's adopted. The season finale to this season is really what pushes the whole show in a little too far over the edge. Larry decides to give his kidney to Richard Lewis because he thinks that he's adopted, and he takes on more of a Christian personality, only to find out that he's actually not adopted right before he goes into surgery. Larry donates the kidney, dies, goes to heaven, and they portray all of this. Does his typical complaining and, nitpicking about heaven, and they send him back to his body, and that's how that season ends. It's weird. It's a weird season, and it was still pretty good, but it definitely signaled a change in the series that I didn't know if I was quite going to be into, but it only got worse from there. Now we're getting into the classic Curb Your Enthusiasm territory, as I like to call it. The 4 seasons, the first 4 seasons that defined the show, and I feel like garnered all of the fans that, these seasons would have to carry the fans into the ridiculousness that would follow. Season 2, I thought, was really good. I mean, pretty much from here on out, I love all these seasons. It's just a matter of which ones I like more than the other. Season 2 had the whole arc of Larry trying to, again, start a TV project, because this is the first we see of Cheryl's kind of jeering for Larry to get out and work again, do something with yourself, stop just hanging around the house. So he's like, okay, all right, and his manager, Jeff Green, played by Jeff Garlin, is like, you need to work, So this is the first kind of entrance that we see of any Seinfeld characters, which is cool, especially when this season came out in 2001. You hadn't seen these characters really together since the Seinfeld finale in 1999, so it was cool. A few years had passed and they were already, on Larry David's show. And so he's basically trying to pitch this idea to Jason Alexander, who played George, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who played Elaine. First, he pitches it to George about this loser who, or not loser, but this guy who played a loser on a big sitcom like a Seinfeld, and it didn't work. After the show ended, he has all this trouble finding work because everybody associates him with his character that he played on the show. So that's the idea of the show that he's trying to pitch to Jason Alexander, and it's like you'd think the show would be focusing on that, but what the show actually focuses on is the logistical kind of problems that Larry gets into on the way to Jason's office. He gets a flat tire, then he misses the meeting. They get into a big back and forth about whose office they're going to meet at, and that's the actual meat of this show, not the idea that is being pitched. So him and Jason stop working together, so then Larry contacts Julia Louis-Dreyfus and does the same idea for her, And they actually get to a point of pitching their idea to the network. So actually in this season, they go to the HBO offices, they go to CBS, ABC, and for individual hilarious reasons, it fails with each and every network. Larry does something to each one of these heads of the network to piss them off to the point to where they said, screw you, we don't want to do your show. And it's just great. It's a hilarious, it's a very fun and hilarious watch. Highly recommend season 2 and all the other seasons coming up. Alright, so season 3 sees Larry invest in a restaurant with some of his other rich cohorts, such as Michael York and Ted Danson. And the whole process of opening the restaurant and the building of it and just all the kind of craziness that goes on with this restaurant opening is really fascinating and interesting to watch. And it's a great situation to put Larry in to where he can screw things up, from him having to choose the uniforms to his bell ringing system to hail the waiters. In each individual table has a different tone bell, and when you hear your tone, that's when you know you need to go to that table or whatever. They also got episodes such as the terrorist attack, which is basically about Larry, pretending that he has a tip from a high-ranking official about a 9/11 attack and only telling certain people to make them feel special. And I mean, he did this a year after September 11th, which was very ballsy, typical Larry David fashion to be pushing the limits like that. You have the Crazy Eyes Killa episode, which it was fucking hilarious. Chris Williams, who plays Crazy Eyes Killa, did a really good job. I thought he was a really funny character. You had the Mary, Joseph, and Larry episode, where Larry hires a nativity scene, like a live-action nativity scene, to come set up at his house because he screwed up with Cheryl's parents, who are devout Catholics, and Larry just says inappropriate stuff to the shepherd Joseph, and Larry's thinks that Mary is hot, and then you have the grand opening episode, and all the stuff with Larry having to find a chef, and it's just a really good season. And then the French chef with the Tourette's at the end, and everyone starts swearing in the restaurant. If you've seen it, you know what I mean. The third season was really, really good, and yeah, definitely classic Curb Your Enthusiasm. Alright, this second spot was such a toss-up, and at the last minute, after looking over my notes, I think I'm going to have to reverse my decision and say that the second best Curb Your Enthusiasm season was season 4. I just felt like the first season encapsulated the essence of the show the best, but season 4 is the last truly great Curb Your Enthusiasm season before they started getting a little over at the top. They started getting a little too zany and cartoony with their scenarios that they would get in. The arch for this season is believable in the world of Larry David. Mel Brooks gives Larry the offer, or gives Larry the part to be to play in the Producers on Broadway. He gives him the part of Max Bialystock. And Mel Brooks, unbeknownst to Larry, is wanting Larry David specifically to play this character because he knows that Larry is going to screw it up and the Producers will get canceled, because Mel Brooks is tired of dealing with this production and he wants it to shut down. So he's basically hiring Larry because he knows Larry's going to screw it up. Larry doesn't know any of this. Larry just thinks that, oh, well, Mel must have seen something in me. And Larry goes through having to learn lines and dances and everything that goes along in being in a big time Broadway production. Leopold Bloom is the other character in the Producers, who is played at first by David Schwimmer. So you got Larry David and David Schwimmer interacting together on the show on Curb Your Enthusiasm, and David Schwimmer did such a good job playing it completely real. And his annoyance at Larry and his lack of professionalism in Broadway and his lack of ability in Broadway. It's just so fun to watch the awkward tension between these two characters. And remember, I mean, they're playing themselves on the show, so it's not like... It's an exaggerated reality, but it's not cartoony. It's still very real. And the situations that Larry runs into in the season are all very real and hilarious, and just inside the realm of possibility that something that could actually happen to someone. David Schwimmer eventually quits the production, and Ben Stiller takes the part of Leopold Bloom. And Ben Stiller and Larry David's interactions are even more awkward. Ben Stiller plays such a whiny little baby in this season, and Larry is just the pain in his ass the whole way through, and it's just funny. Oh wait, I got that totally mixed up. Ben Stiller was the first guy, and then David Schwimmer was the second guy. That's right. I'm sorry, my bad. Larry goes to Ben Stiller's birthday party and accidentally pokes him in the eye with one of those little skewers that go through hors d'oeuvres. You have the Five Wood episode, the carpool lane with the prostitute, Wandering Bear, the Holocaust survivor, and then of course opening night. Of course, the other arch in this season is that when Larry and Cheryl first got married, Cheryl said on their 10th anniversary Larry could fuck whoever he wanted to as her gift to him, and she would not be mad about it. And so he reminded her of that, and so him trying to find a woman to have sex with him is the other arch in this season. And seeing Larry trying to hit on women is the funniest thing, and you gotta think that it's not that far from reality. This is just a really great season, and one of my favorite. Finally, we get to the best season of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and that is the first one. This season really encapsulated to me what the show should have been the entire time. Every single thing that happened in the first season was could have so happened to anybody. And it's the same kind of philosophy that Seinfeld was built on. There's these little nooks and crannies in life that happen to us in our everyday life that we never talk about. But subconsciously, wow, that's a funny little, thing that happened, or that's a funny little hole in life that no one talks about. But Larry David took all those moments and he crystallized them into a TV show, which is what Seinfeld was to a certain extent, but it was a sitcom, so they had to have their little sitcom, canned laughter and stuff. But this was the show that Larry wanted Seinfeld to be. He said in interviews he wanted Seinfeld to be a single camera shoot that was more reality-based and wasn't like this 3-camera sitcom thing. So the first season of Curb Your Enthusiasm was what the first season of Seinfeld was supposed to be. And the situations that you get in season 1 with the pants tent, Ted and Mary, Porno Gil, the bracelet, interior decorator, The Wire, with that pain in the ass next door neighbor that makes several more appearances in the show that you grow to hate, the Amco guy, beloved aunt, beloved cunt, affirmative action. Oh, that is such an awkward episode. And the group, which has to do with the vagina monologues and the rape or the incest survivor group or whatever. It's just so delicious. This whole season is incredible. And if you're trying to get into this show, I would highly recommend starting with season 1. It's just, everything's played so real, and it's unlike anything you've seen on TV before. I don't know. You just never seen something where it's so close to reality, but it's not. But it is, and that's what really made this show great to me. And unfortunately, everything after season 1 just kind of went on a slow downhill, just trend of not realistic. And then after, it's about season 5, it just nosedived into the world of just unrealistic, zany circumstances. But anyway, we'll always have season 1, so I love this show. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. What's your order for seasons of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and do you think the show's still funny? Do you think it sucks now? What's your opinions on the show in general? Leave your opinions or your comments in the comment section below. Give this video a thumbs up, ring the fucking bell, notifications, whatever. And subscribe. Have a good rest of your night.